Hi besties, let's talk about all of the books that were so bad I couldn't finish them. I must fully admit that 2024 was probably my worst reading year in a while. I just feel like there were a lot of things that I did not enjoy. I also had a reading goal of 100 books, and unfortunately I missed it by quite a lot. I only read 81. And before you say anything, yes, I understand reading 81 books is a lot for anyone, but for a booktuber, especially because I had a reading slump for like 2 months, yeah, I could have done better. I really could have. And what really grinds my gears is that I DNF'd 11 books, and that would not have gotten me to a full 100 books, but it would have put me in the 90s. So I'm very pissed off with these books, but you know, sometimes you gotta DNF, and I gotta normalize DNFing. It's okay. So this first book, I don't think I ever talked about reading it on my channel because I read it around the holidays. I know I DNF'd it around New Year's. If I had finished it, it would have been on my worst list, and that is Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I had read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, and I thought it was so cute, so fun. This book, on the other hand, was idiotic. It's about this girl that has some sort of brain injury, and she now has facial blindness and she can't recognize people. She has this guy that she likes and then a guy that she doesn't like, and so the issue is that she like can't remember the guy that she's talking to face. And I am not going to tell you more about the plot, but I feel like based on what I just said, you might be able to guess where the story was going. The writing style in this was insufferable. The main character was a hot mess. I did not enjoy her at all. I remember her being like very like flaky all over the place. She was supposed to be like an artist, and that was also an issue because she needed to paint for like a portrait contest, and now she had facial blindness, so she can't paint. It's like a whole thing. It just was not interesting, and the writing was so cringy and so bad. I just cannot even believe this is the same author that wrote The Bodyguard because they just had such different vibes. Up next, we have Never Fall for Your Fiance by Virginia Heath. First and foremost, I think whoever decided to start putting cartoon covers on Regency romances needs to be hung in the square. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's disgusting. I think it's inappropriate. I want a Bodice Ripper cover, and I want it now. But even if we'd had a sexy Fabio cover, I don't think that that would have saved this book. I'm trying really hard to remember all the ins and outs of this plot. I think it was about a girl who is down on her luck. There's this guy who's like a duke or something, and his mom has been pressuring him to get married, but she's been out of the country. And then his mom tells him that she's coming to town, and so he's like, oh my god, fuck, I need to get my fake fiance. The biggest issue is that this book was boring, and it also felt kind of like a modern Regency romance. Like, I get that a lot of Regency romance you're gonna read, it's not historically accurate, but something about this just felt off. It felt off. And I also didn't love the power dynamics of the guy being really wealthy and him like paying her. I remember DNFing also because it's so long for no reason. Like, I read like half of it and I was like, absolutely not. I'm gonna put this down. I think some of my subscribers recommended this book to me, and I'm very sorry if you love this book, but it did not do it for me. It did not. Next one is a doozy because it was a book club pick, so my bad. And that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I blame Reagan from Peru's Project for this one. She just has a way of talking about books where she can always convince me to read things that I don't want to read, but I probably shouldn't have read a historical fiction because that's not really what I normally read, and also it's not normally what a lot of my patrons read. So a lot of us DNF'd this book, and a lot of us just did not enjoy it. The live show discussion for this was actually very funny because one of my patrons, Fari, was one of the only people who finished it. So she actually made us a chart of all the characters to explain to us all the interrelations between everyone, because this book is basically a fictional retelling take on Shakespeare's wife. And it's all about how she was like living at home taking care of their children, and then one of their children dies. I will say that the writing is very good. I could see why someone else might like Maggie O'Farrell, just because the writing was very vivid. I could picture a lot of it like in my head, like the way that she would bring you into a scene of like characters talking or like doing something was very like, she would start in the setting and then like zoom in to the people, and it was very cool. It was very like cinematic. Unfortunately, it was just very slow. The next book is Close Enough to Hurt by Catherine A. Olson. I picked this up during a mood reading vlog. I randomly had it on Libro FM from an advanced listener copy that I got a while ago. I always get books from them every month, and I just thought it sounded good because it kind of sounded like a thriller with maybe some romance in it, but that it was going to be a kind of like cut through thing. It's about this girl who goes and she like frames people's partners when they're like bad. The cover was just promising a lot more because of the knife and everything, and this idea of like a femme fatale that's like going in and like treating these evil men or something. I don't know. Again, I don't fully remember the plot. The next one hurts because it used to be an all-time favorite book of mine, and that is Angel Fall by Susan E. I did a vlog where I reread all of my questionable favorites. I wanted to go back on a lot of the old YA that I used to like and books that I really enjoyed in like 2015 and see if they still stood up to the test of time. And unfortunately, I think Angel Fall is one of those books that you have to leave behind in your young adulthood. The writing is not as good as I remember. This book is about a girl named Penryn who is trying to survive during kind of the apocalypse. Like, all these angels have come down to Earth, and she is, you know, going around with her sister who's in a wheelchair trying to protect her sister. Her sister gets kidnapped by a bunch of angels, and then she has to team up with a fallen angel named Raffi. It was just very unfortunate because this truly used to be one of my favorite books. I was like, oh my god, I will love this book forever. And now I read it and I was like, Ew, I used to like that. I don't know. 23-year-old Sarah had a very different brain than current Sarah. Up next, we have a Summerween read, and that is The Night Parade by Ronald Mulvey. This book is basically if you took Joel from The Last of Us and made him an idiot, because it's about a dad whose daughter is the cure to this like plague that's going around, and so he is taking off with her, trying to get her away from like all these government people who are trying to hunt her down to like do experiments on her. Everything they did in every part of the book that I read was so idiotic. Like even the little girl sometimes would be like, hey dad, I don't think we should do that thing that we're about to do. I feel like that's not gonna work out for us. And every time the dad was like, I'm the adult, listen to me, and they would do it, and the girl was always right. I just could not get into the characters, and I cannot abide a dumb man. With a saddened heart, I do also have to say that I DNF'd Heartstone by Catherine Ellen White. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling with dragons. Sounds good, sounds fun. I love Pride and Prejudice. I love dragons. Put them together, cozy romantasy, that would be a great time. Unfortunately for me, I discovered something about myself, and that is that I don't love retellings that are kind of one-to-one, because pretty much every character that you would come across in Pride and Prejudice, like Mr. Wickham, Mr. Collins, the main characters like Lizzie, etc., like Mr. Darcy, they're all in this with different names. I got really distracted while I was reading this because I kept trying to map the story to like what was going on with the original story in my brain. And the fantasy elements, although they added a certain je ne sais quoi, they didn't really do anything for me. Like none of the characters were speaking to me. I didn't even really like the dragons, which is unfortunate because the dragons are, you know, important characters. I feel like all the books that I'm talking about are making me very sad because I just saw the next one on the list and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot I DNF'd this. And that is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. It is so sad because I absolutely loved Mary by Nat Cassidy. It was like one of my favorite horror books I've ever read. Ugh, it just wasn't good. I think the biggest issue, number one, main character, a man. Because something about Mary is that Nat Cassidy did an amazing job telling the story of a woman like going through menopause. But this book is basically about a man who's like, fuck my responsibilities, fuck my wife, fuck my kid. Because it's about this family. They move into this very expensive apartment in New York City because they win a lottery, and they recently had a baby, and there were some complications in the pregnancy, so the wife ended up paralyzed from the waist down. And so when they move into this new apartment building, a lot of weird stuff starts happening. It's very like creepy vibes. He gets kind of obsessed with the building and gets very into the people who live there, and he starts working for this woman, and like the whole book he just wants to like cheat on his wife and leave her. Like it's just like she asks him to do very basic things. Like she does audiobook narration as her job, and she needs to fix her like booth that she records audiobooks in. She asks him to go to Home Depot no less than 10 times, and he never does. And then the book is also about the mom just really not wanting to be a mom. Like her postpartum depression is really bad, which obviously my heart goes out to women who have postpartum. Like that is so sad. But I think the combination of the mom having postpartum and then the dad wanting to like not really be there with his family, it was too much for me. Like I got to a point halfway through the book where someone like literally died. Like there was like blood on the page, and I was like, if I never read another page of this, I would not care. And then I asked Katie Colson what happened, because I went on Goodreads to see, does anyone agree with me about this book being bad? And I read Katie Colson's review, so I called her and I was like, can you please tell me how Nestlings ends, because I cannot read another page. And she told me the ending. I was like, I am so glad that I will not read this. Up next, we have Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. I'm kind of becoming someone that when I'm reading a book, if I'm halfway through it and I realize if I never picked it up again, I don't care how it ends, I'm not gonna force myself to finish it. This is about a woman who many years ago, her street that she lived on went missing. It was very much like WandaVision. Like it's a bubble that like covered her street, and her and like two other friends are the only ones that didn't disappear into this void. And now it's all these ghosts that like live under a dome. I just got to a point halfway through where I was like, I don't care. And there even was a homoerotic friendship in it, which usually can keep me dialed in, but something about it, just, I couldn't. Also, maybe it was because I was reading it for a 24-hour reading vlog, and this was one of the last things I was attempting to read. And at that point, I was just like, I don't care anymore. Another one that I attempted to read during that 24-hour readathon is Graveyard Shift by Emma Rio. In the vlog, I did say that I would return to this and finish it later on audio because I was physically reading it. I hate to say it, I don't think I'm going to. I've seen a lot more people talk about this book. A lot of people say that the way that this ends feels like it was the start of a book that Emma Rio just like didn't finish. I guess she even admitted that in an interview once, that her publisher was asking her if she had anything and this was an unfinished draft, and so she rewrote it to be a novella. And my thing is, why did we wait so many years for Emma Rio to write something new? For her to write this. Give us a full-length book. That is what we want. That is what we deserve. Please, Meredith. I don't know if M stands for Meredith, but I'm just going with it. And finally, the last book that I DNF'd this year, which I actually DNF'd a couple days ago, was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the woman that wrote Eat, Pray, Love. So I was a little skeptical going into it because of the Eat, Pray, Love of it all. The issue is that this audiobook was 15 hours long, and we are at the end of the year when I have a lot to do. I have a lot of end of year content to make. It was also the holidays. I just simply didn't have space in my heart for this long of a book. It's about this girl in the 40s who flunks out of Vassar College, and she moves to New York to live with her aunt who owns a theater, and she gets kind of immersed in this, you know, this world of showgirls and actors. And I actually found it quite interesting because it did have some parallels to Evelyn Hugo, but where I left off in the book, the main character had just done something very, very terrible. Like, she did a very big mistake, and it was kind of affecting all the characters. So not only was this book very long, but I was also getting very stressed out. I don't know if this is a forever DNF. I could see myself going back. You can weigh in the comments and tell me if you think I should go back to City of Girls. But besties, that brings me to the end of all of the books that I DNF'd in 2024. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? We can discuss it. Also, if you've made it to the end of this video, feel free to use a cat emoji in honor of my Sylvanian family earrings. I think this is a cat. Is this a cat? Also, if you're interested in seeing more of me, you can always check out my Patreon in the link down below, where I have extra content, reading vlogs, lifestyle vlogs, lots of reading sprints, game nights, all sorts of fun little things. Also, I love planning readathons for my patrons. I have a lot of fun readathons coming up in the new year, so check that out if that interests you. And I thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.